Oh no. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of TV is Our Real Mom. I'm your host, Dave, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, my sister, Katie. Katie, what's happening in your world today over there?
Nothing.
Not
Whole
much?
lot of nothing.
Whole
Yeah.
lot of nothing today?
hmm
Uh, are you getting this weather, this crazy weather?
Oh, we got it yesterday. Yeah, we got some snow. We are officially in winter mode now, which sucks.
Yeah, same here. We're getting dumped on today too, so it's gonna be I decided last night while it was snowing that I was going to stay in all day today. I'm not leaving my house.
Same. That was my decision as well.
We think a lot alike. I mean, why go out in the shit if you don't have to?
And it's
Right?
always the first day, and people aren't prepared yet, and they don't really remember how to drive, myself included. So it's best just to give it a day.
For sure. So, what better thing to do if you're stuck indoors on a snowy day than
Mhm.
to binge watch television and podcast about it?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's the world we live in now.
So yeah, we are here today to discuss Stranger Things, the phenomenon that it is. Mostly just going to talk about one episode of season 2 today because that just came out. Has it been a week now? It's been about officially 1 week, right?
1 week. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're already so far behind that no one's ever going to listen to this. But if you do somehow manage to find this, here it is. We're going to discuss episode 1 of season 2 of Stranger Things today. And yeah, let's talk a little bit about how we're going to approach this, Katie, because what do you know? How are we going to do this?
Well, I think when I watched the first season of Stranger Things, I loved it, but I didn't necessarily understand it. And then I felt upon a rewatch, I understood it 10 times better. So you and I decided that we would watch the whole thing and then go back, start at the beginning, and podcast on our second time watching. So we are now on our second time watching episode 1 to see if it all makes a little bit more sense, because there's a lot in these sci-fi shows, these monsters from another dimension shows that I don't get upon the first watch. And I'm just kind of watching for characters and for jokes and for 80s references, the first time around. So I understand it better the second time around. So I think we'll be a lot more helpful, have a little bit more insight watching it another time and then discussing it.
Yeah, I completely agree that we are going to benefit greatly from a rewatch before we talk about it. Um, should I mention my overall impression of the season, or should we like leave that for now and just kind of move on
Well, maybe you
to?
can mention it because I have a feeling it may change upon your second watch
Yeah,
through.
yeah. So the middle part of the season for me just felt really pointless. It felt like to me the first part of the season was so strong that I think I texted you immediately. I was like, "Oh, the hype is real. Like it's
The
so
first
good."
episode, even on a rewatch, is awesome.
It is.
Really,
Yeah,
really
I
good.
really like it again on the rewatch too. Yeah. And then I felt like it didn't end like super strong, but the last couple episodes ended strong enough for me to end or to feel pretty good about the season as a whole. But
hmm
there's like a middle section of this season that just feels like filler to me, and I just was not into it. I was not feeling it. But um, who knows? Maybe on the rewatch, maybe I just wasn't following it. I wasn't getting it. I don't know. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. Um, but you know, here we are to talk about it. So let's just do that. Um, let's start with episode 1. Let's talk about episode 1.
Mad Max,
Mad Max is the title of the episode. Do you want
all
to
caps. Mad Max.
start from the top?
I mean, are we gonna go through it beat by beat? I feel like that's boring.
Okay, sure.
Sure or no? Because I feel like that's a little bit. That's
Yeah,
a lot.
I just don't know like where to start or what to talk about, you know.
Well, we're getting reintroduced to our characters about a year after the events of the first season. Everybody looks a little bit better. Winona Ryder's hairstyle in this season is much better, much more flattering. Um, The boys, all their voices have gotten a little bit lower. Uh, 11
Yeah.
is nowhere to be found until the end of the episode.
Hmm.
So it's just like readjusting. Mike is super moody, very emo because he misses 11.
Yeah.
And, that's the general gist. It's a catch-up episode at first, but it's a well-done catch-up episode, with hints that there are other um, dramas to unfold. There's a lot of good stuff in the episode.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the thing that makes the first two episodes so great, it's all about the kids, and
Yes.
that's all this show really has going for it, in my opinion. Like, there's there's two things that like this show has that is so good about this show that I think sells the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though at times I feel like the plot is weird and doesn't necessarily work. What I really like is the kids, the actors that play these kids. They do such a good job. I like the characters, and of course the '80s nostalgia. So
Yeah.
so if you take a lot of great '80s nostalgia and deliver it through these kid characters in a solid way, bam, I mean, you've got yourself a great episode, and that's what happens here.
It's not like heavy-handed either, like it's natural, because there are 80s movies where the 80s stuff is so forced and it doesn't look real, whereas in Stranger Things the 80s stuff, it just feels like a part of that world, like the whole world is so authentically 80s that you buy into all of it. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel shoved down your throat. And maybe it's because it's like it's in a neighborhood. It's like real 80s. It's Midwestern America, kids, hanging out, and that's what makes it seem authentic. There is an episode later on that super doesn't feel authentic, but we'll save that for another time.
Yeah.
But and all the music is the music that was on back then, and the music, you heard 10 years later when we were kids. So.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think there's definitely a ton of 80s pop culture references jam packed into the whole season, but I get what you're saying, that the vibe and the overall atmosphere is just a little more subtle and more accurate. It's not like boom, like huge sunglasses,
Hot Tub Time Machine.
yeah, or like neon colors all over the place, like Saved by the Bell stuff,
True. Yeah, it's
well,
very
Saved by the Bell is
realistic.
90s, sorry, but you get what I'm saying. The colors, yeah, and stuff. So yeah, I think that's what this show has going for it more than anything, other than maybe the kids, is
You
such
don't care for
awesome.
any of the adults?
I do actually, I like the adult characters too. I pretty much like all of the older characters as well. I guess maybe for me, it's just that I was an 80s kid, or I was born in the 80s. So I just really get a rush from the stuff that the kids like and that they're into in the 80s. Like, especially like they go to the arcade, like when they're like hunting for quarters, what's your haul? Like,
Yeah.
when
Well,
they're
like
getting
we
quarters.
were a bit later and we had our Nintendo and you could play that at home. But if you had been their age in the 80s, yeah, it'd be the arcade is what you would be doing.
Yeah, and I guess I can't really relate to the arcade as much, even though I went to it once in a while. But I guess I can relate to like video games, like being the thing to do when you're a kid, and playing with your friends and stuff like that. And yeah, so I don't know.
I wish that how Joyce gave herself a better haircut in this season. I wish she had done the same for Will, because the poor guy, he gets made fun of enough for what he's been through, and he still has that terrible hair.
He should get a zombie boy haircut for sure.
Well, just slick it back or cut it. Come on, Will.
Is that an 80s style that he's rocking there?
I think it's more like an early 80s style, I think. But, I think it's supposed to be symbolic of the character. I mean, they're just kind of outcasts. So.
Right, yeah. And
why make it look cool?
Supposed to be poor, too. Right.
Yes, I believe that as well.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about Will in this episode. What the hell's going on? What the hell's going on with Will? And we don't, like, once again, we've seen what happens, so we know kind of
We know what's going on.
But in this episode, a little recap of what's going on with Will.
He just suddenly has these visions where he flips over to the upside down without any warning, and he sees things and he feels things, but we don't know what that means at this point. But it's enough to scare his mom, and they take him to a psychologist played by Paul Reiser, who I love, and just kind of try to figure out what's happening with him. And they basically tell him it's all in his head. He's got post-traumatic stress disorder, which makes sense. You would buy that. But, last season, Joyce went through all this stuff knowing Will was alive and everyone thinking she was crazy. And so she's prone to believe Will, even when things that he's saying seem crazy to the rest of the world.
Right. So where are these doctors? They are in the same.
They're in the lab.
So they're in the same lab from season 1. Like, is this the same thing?
Yeah, there's some confusion there. Like, why wasn't that lab shut down?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why the whole middle part of the season is just like, it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, I think it's going to make more sense on a rewatch, but I know I'm picking up what you're laying down. But my concern was, why was this lab allowed to continue to operate after the nonsense that they pulled last season?
And why are they bringing Will to this guy?
And why are they bringing Will there when they know that lab was responsible for what happened to him in the first place?
Yeah, I mean,
and what they did to 11. Ugh, I mean, come on.
I'm a little disappointed because, Catie, you're the person who can like tie these loose ends up for me and make me understand. But like, oh, now okay, I don't get it. If you're, I don't get it either. Like, why are they bringing it back here? Why is this lab still open? Well, everything you just said.
I think that they have spun a tale to the public about what happened that does not match what actually happened. And the government or someone, some they is threatening everybody that if they reveal the truth, they will be killed. So at the beginning, when we meet Paul Reiser's character, you're like, okay, is he shady like Papa, or is he like actually trying to help Will? And you don't know. Right.
Yeah, and I also love Paul Reiser in this season and in this episode. I just love his character, how he plays that charismatic doctor. Like when he's
good at it.
When he's doing that like candy thing, like what's your desert island candy? Like what would you have?
You making room for candy? It looks like you lost. He's so doctory.
Yeah, and it's just perfect. And he's like, I'm more of a mounds guy myself, but
Yeah, he nails it. It's like it's that awkward doctor banter they do with everybody, but you still buy into it.
They're so good at it. It's like part of their job, makes you feel a little more at ease and stuff.
You're like, oh, he likes me.
It makes you like the doctor a little bit, even though you don't know if you can trust him.
Yeah, no, I don't know if Will should trust this doctor at this point.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like what do we see of the background or the deeper, darker stuff of the lab? What's going on in there?
I don't know, because
so wait. They come pull the doctor away. They're like, they're ready for you. He goes upstairs. He's like, oh, it's another hot one today. He's like, that never gets old. And the guy goes.
They're testing a burn. They are burning the little tendril things that are part of the upside down.
Right.
Because the gate that 11 opened pre-season 1, or at the beginning, we didn't actually see it.
Okay, so when this happened, she opened a gate. Because I've forgotten a lot of season 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
11 opened a gate to the upside down, and that's how the Demogorgon got out in the first place. Like, they were performing all these experiments, and 11 was so powerful, and they angered her so much that she opened the gate to the upside down. So she is the reason that the bad shit started happening. Well, the people that tortured her are the reason, but indirectly, she's the reason why the Demogorgon comes and takes Barb and takes Will and blah, blah, blah. So that gate is still open. And so the Hawkins lab, perhaps the reason it's still there is to test, how to kill whatever's over there, to close the gate. I don't know, but they're testing by burning these little tendril things like whatever Will puked up, or I still don't know for sure. But they're testing it. Look as if they're getting ready for a bigger burn.
Okay. Point. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess my viewing of season 2 probably would have benefited a lot from a rewatch of season 1 right before.
Yes, David, I did that. I did my homework. It's like it's unpleasant. Like you get to rewatch season 1, which is awesome.
Which, yeah, like I honestly remember more fondly than this season, but we'll see.
Give it time. Give it time. Ease up on the Stranger Things, man.
Okay, yeah, I'll ease up. Yeah, so basically they're burning upside down world stuff.
Yes,
from the portal.
Seems a lot less sinister at this point. Like you don't have the abusing and doing tests on children aspect. They're just performing tests on whatever's over there.
Yeah, and I think it sounds more like maintenance because it's like a daily. They do this every day,
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, just the way he says that joke never gets old. It's a hot one. It's
right,
like
so maybe it is just maintenance.
Every day he's just going in there doing the same shit every day, burning this, whatever.
But why does he need to be there then? He's a psychiatrist.
Why does he need to be there? I have no idea.
Unless he's just the owner of the lab.
So, obviously later in the season, we're probably going to get more about these contaminated pumpkins. What can we say? What can we say about the contaminated pumpkins that you would gather from just this episode?
They look disgusting.
And that's about it. That's about all we can say, right? Other than the farmer guy thinks Eugene is responsible.
Yeah, he thinks another rival pumpkin farmer or just regular farmer is responsible, which is silly, but you know how small town folk are.
They're crazy. All of them.
That's not what I was implying, but
yeah.
No, like the competition is bad because there's not many people out there to provide for. So, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you.
Okay. I don't know what to say about the pumpkins. Like that, to be honest with you, that's the part of the whole series that I didn't get. So that's why I'm looking forward to rewatching and understanding. The pumpkins are symbolic of something that's going on underneath that is connected to the lab. That is all I know.
Yeah.
Was that a spoiler?
I wonder if that is a spoiler. But I feel like it's not, because I feel like everybody has to be thinking they're connected, right? I mean,
yes, because they're not just going to have this poison pumpkin storyline for nothing.
Yeah, and what do you think? They're actually poisoned. I guess maybe it is
these farmers going after each other.
Okay, but
that's not what it is.
Yeah, that's a thing that happens in this episode.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Steve and what's the girl's name? The sister's name again?
Nancy.
Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan, and we have some new characters coming in.
Oh my god.
So one scene we have Steve and Nancy. Steve is writing an essay to get into college. Is that right?
His hair is pretty, but his writing sucks.
Yeah. So Nancy's helping him out, and in that scene we have a new character show up, or two new characters actually.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we know about these people from just this episode?
Maxine, aka Max, is really good at one of the video games, Dig Dug.
Yep.
And she skateboards. She's clearly smart because she doesn't like being creeped on by the four guys. Billy likes to wear two different tones of denim. He smokes. He drives. I don't know what car he is. I'm not a car person.
Is that a Thunderbird?
I don't know.
I'm gonna throw out Thunderbird. I'm not a car guy either, but
it's loud. It's obnoxious. It
looks like a
just like him. And his hair is magnificent.
He's got a mullet, right? Doesn't he basically have a mullet?
It's like a real mullet, like a realistic mullet that you saw back in those days.
Yeah, and he rolls in to rock you like a hurricane.
Yes, of course.
Pretty good. And we're led to believe they're brother and sister, sort of.
That is the implication, yes. But they clearly don't get along, because when he dropped her off at the arcade, she was yelling at him, and he was yelling at her, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah. Obviously don't get along.
No, not for us.
Yeah, that's pretty much all we get from them, other than Max. I guess I like the part where the girls are like leaning against the car. They're like, "Check out that ass."
Yeah.
They're like, "Watch it, look at it go," or something.
There you go.
That was
Yeah,
pretty
I've
good.
seen, apparently there's this whole thing online where people think he looks like Zac Efron, and I'm like, I don't see it at all.
Maybe like a real little tiny bit. Not
You
really
know who
though.
he brings to mind for me is Rob Lowe from the 80s. That's like exactly what he looks like.
Oh, nice.
Except stockier and not dark brown hair. I don't know. Like, is he blonde? He's not blonde. He's got light brown hair.
I think he's got like brown hair or something.
But anyway, you just get the sense this kid's gonna be trouble.
He's trouble. Yeah, obviously.
Trouble rolled into town in a Thunderbird.
Right. So yeah, the boys are obviously in this episode they're enamored with Max, right? Because they're trying to figure out like who she is, and they already have made that connection that Mad Max, that she is her, and she plays video games.
By her because she skateboards and she plays video games. Which, this is a simpler time, you know. Girls doing that was like not as common as girls doing those things today.
Right.
Now nobody bats an eye, but back then times were different.
Yes. Yeah, so I like the part in class when someone's got like one of those paper fortune teller things.
Oh yeah. I forgot what you called those.
Like, totally dazed. Yeah. Yeah, I just like the classroom stuff. Like, once again,
Clark is the best.
I think that's where this whole show excels the most, and the stuff that I really love is just those little moments that remind you of like childhood and being in class and your buddies and all that stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
they're so cute, their little friends group, but you do sense little problems within it. Like I said, Will is, you know, they're all very concerned about Will. Like when his mom comes to pick him up, they're all like, man, he seems quiet today. And then Mike's going through something, clearly. So you really have Dustin and Lucas, who were like they're the most unfazed by what happened, I think, but they're still, you know, they're more, I don't know. They're the more comic relief people, not the most serious.
Yeah. I friggin' love Dustin, man. He's
quite something, yes.
He's my favorite character in this show.
Is amazing. Damn, I was gonna say something, but I'm not gonna give it away. So yeah. He's great.
Yeah. Let's see, what else have we not talked about? Just real quick, I love that and this is the stuff I like. Once again, the reference to Dragon's Lair, that's like,
do you remember that?
See, it's kind of like notorious now for being like such a shitty. Yeah, game? It's a real game. It was like a real arcade game, but then it got like, you know, ported over to some consoles, and it's just kind of famous for being one of the shittiest games of all time. Like,
really? Did you? I looked it up before we came on, and I didn't really get much time to read about it. But there are 3 video games in the Smithsonian, and that is one of them.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is about that game, but I know that it sucks.
Is it something to do with the animation? Because
I think that's what it is.
I wouldn't expect a, you know, stock 1983 arcade game to look like that.
Yeah, that's probably what makes it kind of like revolutionary as an arcade game, is they got like artists from who Disney? Did like Disney cartoons or something like that. I don't know.
That princess, I don't know what era this is supposed to be, but she is wearing a negligee in the Middle Ages.
What's a negligee again?
Like a nightie. Like see-through nightie.
Yeah, I'm glad we got you to pick up on the like fashion stuff. Because like
how can you not?
That's what you're here for. Someone's got to comment on that stuff.
Yeah, I do like Nancy's shorter hair. Looks better. I like it.
Yeah, Nancy's cute. I don't know. Like she looks good with that haircut. I like it.
We should talk about them going to Barb's parents' house. Barb finally getting some recognition. I was happy when Nancy was crying in the bathroom. I was like, yeah, you should be crying. It's your fault that she's dead.
I know.
You
Yeah.
should be weeping and feeling guilty because this is all your fault.
Yeah, and on the first watch, you don't really think of that until she
I
does
did.
like until she does it. Oh, you did. Okay. When she went to the bathroom and started crying, it was at that point like, oh yeah, like
You
they
killed Barb.
should feel guilty about that.
You
Yeah.
ditched Barb, made her drive your ass to a party with 3 assholes so you could get it on with pretty boy over here while you ditched her and made her sit in the pool and get eaten.
Yeah, I mean, it's her fault.
That's all on Nancy. The end.
Yeah. Yeah, so in this dinner with the Hollands,
KFC.
KFC, right? It's KFC dinner.
Mhm.
But they mentioned that they've hired a what is it, an undercover reporter or something like
A
that named
freelance reporter, investigative reporter who used to work for some newspaper in Chicago.
Murray Bauman.
Okay.
And Bauman, I don't remember. But we do it is it implied yet that we saw him earlier,
Yeah,
or
we see him in the police station with Hopper, and he even says to the guy, quit bleeding these people dry and just leave them alone.
right?
And they are selling their house to pay for him. Geez, how much does he charge?
I know. So basically, this guy thinks that there's Russian spies in Hawkins. Hawkins is the name of the town, right? I'm not screwing that up.
Yeah, no, it's
Okay.
Hawkins. You're right.
So there's Russian spies in Hawkins, according to this guy, and one of them he claims is like a little girl or a short. I don't. What does he say again?
A little girl with psionic abilities.
Psionic abilities. There you go. So right away, you think of 11, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he even talks about a former employee at the Big Buy, and you flash back to that part in season 1 where she goes and takes all the Eggos and blasts the doors open.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Mike is like having a tough time, right?
Yeah.
He's sort of acting out.
Yeah.
And what do his parents make him do here? I kind of missed that.
He has to fill 2 boxes of his toys for the yard sale. And he said that's too many because his toys have emotional value.
Right. And so in the scene where he's like looking through all his toys and he looks at the Millennium Falcon.
Mm-hmm. That would fill up a box by itself, but you don't want to give that
just
up.
Throw that one in the box. There you go. No. No, you can't give that one up.
No.
Do any of these toys have a connection to 11? Or do they all have a connection to 11? Or is that...
The only one I saw was the Millennium Falcon. So I
feel like he really looked at that for a long time. So I thought, is this something they showed in season 1 that I forgot about?
Well, he still has her little bed set up, and I think he just looked over, and that's where he sits when he tries to talk to her. I think he just can't get her off his mind.
Right. Okay. In a similar context or emotional vibe of this episode, we have Will in his room moping, and Jonathan goes to comfort him. And this is honestly my favorite scene of possibly the season.
It's so cute.
I honestly might have gotten a little choked up. When he
There's a lot of that in this season, though. A lot of those emotional moments, especially towards the end, I guess. But this was one towards the beginning.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I was so locked in and focused. I was really, really feeling this one. But just the conversation about how, you know, he feels like a freak and he's tired of being treated like a freak because he doesn't want everyone to coddle him. And you know, I just love how Jonathan turned this around and said, do you want to be normal? Like, nobody normal in this life ever accomplished anything. It's the freaks that do awesome things. You want to be a freak, you know? That's basically what he said.
You want to be Kenny Rogers.
Exactly. And how great is it when Bob, like Bob's passing by, he's like, I love Kenny Rogers.
I love Bob. I love Bob so much. I love the new characters. Well, I'm not so sure on the brother-sister duo, but the new grown-up characters they got, I love a lot. But
yeah, we haven't really talked about Bob. Do you want to talk about how he's introduced in the episode?
I loved him from the get-go. Like,
and who plays him? Is it Sean Astin? And that's Samwise, right?
Samwise Gamgee is what he will be known as probably forever, or Rudy, or the kid from Goonies. But now he can add Bob the Brain to the list because that apparently he, Hopper, and Joyce all went to high school together. And Bob's nickname was Bob the Brain. So that's how Hopper refers to him.
Right.
Not Joyce doesn't like that though, but yeah, his first scene is he's visiting Joyce at work, and then they're just making out in the back office. But then he comes over later for a movie night with the family, and he's such a nerd. You can tell he's the kind of like stepdad type figure that might not understand his stepkids, but he means well, and he wants them to be happy, and he wants to be accepted by them. And you can't hate on him because he's just so sweet, and he just really, really likes Joyce.
Yeah, he plays that role extremely well.
Yeah.
He works at Radio Shack.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Does.
He works on electronic thingamajiggies as
he's smart, yeah. He's a brain.
What's Winona Ryder's character's name again?
Joyce.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, that's another one of those little things. Like, remember movie night? Remember like when you would get a couple movies or someone would get to pick? It's like your turn to pick.
Come home with a plastic bag, and we always went to a certain store that had the blue cases, so you'd like get so excited when you saw one of those. What were the brown ones? Those were kids movies.
They were like different. Yeah,
they were kids movies. Blue movies were regular movies.
Yeah. But yeah, that, now everyone sits down and watches Netflix, and you can all sit together and flip through and kind of like come to, we can all agree on this movie. But, back then it was like, it's your turn to pick. We'll let you pick the movie tonight because you got to get one. And in this case, I guess they do come home with like 3 movies, but that's another one.
Deals like 3 for 1 or whatever.
Yeah. That's another one of my favorite parts of the episode, though, is sitting on top of the pile when, Bob comes in. He's like, I love Kenny Rogers, but sitting on top of the pile is Mr. Mom. And he's like, ooh, Mr. Mom. And he just takes it. And I'm like, dude, wasn't it Will's turn to pick tonight?
Well, Bob made that decision for him.
Bob made that decision. I was so pissed. I was like, come on, man. Well, it's Will's turn to pick, and Bob just picks Mr. Mom. They're not even into it.
You could tell that Jonathan was not into it, and
He's not feeling it.
Will's going through stuff. I don't think he would have felt anything. It's just, I feel so bad for Will. God, give the kid a break. Ugh. I'm glad he at least is in this season, and we get to see this character, get to know him, get to see the kid act a little bit more. But damn.
Yeah,
it's not easy for him.
Life ain't easy for a Will, that's for sure.
For any buyers, mostly Will.
Yeah. So, speaking of that, the phone rings and they say, what do they say? Don't answer it or something, or don't worry about it.
I didn't get that. Was Joyce just flashing back to when Will was missing and the phone would like burn out on her, or like?
Yeah. I bet that's it. Nice one. Good work there, Catie.
Well, is that when you think it was? It wasn't like.
Now that you say that and remind me that was a thing, yes, I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Well,
that's what I thought, but then I thought it could be like she doesn't want doctors to call, or I guess reporters weren't calling them, so it's probably the first thing.
Right. And so immediately after the phone rings, we have a scene of the lab, kind of shit's going down at the lab.
Yeah, but they didn't show what happened, though. They just showed some fat guy at a control board that was flashing, and then nothing happened.
Yeah, and he drops. He literally drops the ball. I don't know if that's.
But then Will has an episode. So, like, what's the connection there?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is like, are we led to believe that these are connected? His episodes.
They must be.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's a thing. Like something happens at the lab. Something happens in the Upside Down, and Will is getting drawn in or something like that. And so we get this scene of Will walking outside, and he sees like a giant shadowy figure in the distance. I just want to say I love that. Yeah, I love the shadow thing.
It's great. Scary.
Yeah,
it's so big. It's so scary.
Where I feel like this show doesn't always nail the sci-fi elements. My favorite part of this show is the human aspect and not so much the sci-fi stuff. I do like that shadow monster thing, whatever that is. Yeah. It's cool. I dig it. Yeah. So finally, episode ends with the reveal.
Oh, the reveal. Yeah.
this was kind of predictable, right? I mean, everybody knew that.
Yeah,
Everyone knew this episode was going to end one way, right?
they knew. I mean, I didn't know exactly what the deal was.
No, yeah.
Well, well,
You
I was talking.
suspected. Sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
yeah, because at the end of the first season, you see Hopper leaving Waff Egos for 11. So you know that he knows somehow that she's still out there. Um, so it makes sense that he comes home to this cabin in the woods where he's now living and she is waiting for him. However, my sister and I watched this around the same time and we both were like, is this like a creepy thing? Like, did your mind go anywhere near that? Even though you know it wouldn't be because Hopper is a hero and that's not, and he lost a daughter and it makes sense for him to have a surrogate daughter. But
So you're saying maybe like a kidnapping kind of thing, where he's like, "This is
yeah,
my daughter now. You're
maybe
gonna
it's because
replace."
I just read this book where this girl was like living underground with this person she called father, but it's later revealed that he kidnapped her and it's not really her father and he's just brainwashed her, and so that's where my mind went. But you know, it's Hopper. Hopper's a good guy, we know this.
Yeah.
But
Was Cassie reading this book too, or?
no, but that is apparently where her mind went as
Well,
well.
yeah. I mean, I didn't really think anything of that sort or get any vibe
Mhm.
like that. But I'm guessing there's lots of people out there who are like, "This is kind of," or they're like, "It's kind of weird, isn't it?" I don't know, but you know, obviously that's just a thought that comes and goes, and you're like,
Because you
"That's
hear
that's
so much
stupid."
terrible nonsense in the world. You know, it instinctively comes to your mind, but then you think about the characters and you're like, no, that's not what this is. But
Yeah, I think to even acknowledge that is kind of uh it's almost, I won't go as far as say brave, but to just acknowledge that you had that thought is good, because I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh, how dare you think like, oh, it's a kidnapping situation or something," like, I don't
I mean,
know.
it's
How dare you
not.
even have that thought, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I can't help where my mind goes. It's a
Yeah.
twisted
But
organ
I think a
up
lot of
there.
people probably, thought something like that. But yes, it is Hopper. He's a good guy.
He's a
There's
good
been
guy.
nothing to indicate he's not a good guy. So he's
Right.
just looking out for 11. His intentions are good. Uh,
He
we're
wants to
led,
protect her.
yeah, we're led to believe that, he's just watching over her.
Yes.
But obviously, it's obvious he's been keeping her a secret, right? Because
But
Mike,
to what end?
to
To
what
what?
end? Good question. A question that may
I
or
mean,
may
like,
not be answered.
and it's part of the rest of the season, so I won't get into it. But that's what you think. Like, okay, she's been gone for a year. Can he like integrate her into society now somehow? I don't know.
Yeah, and exactly. We know that she hasn't been, because Mike can't get a hold of her and misses her and thinks she's gone. So
Yeah, apparently, yeah, Mike was really in love with 11, even though he's
yeah,
13.
I didn't know that was a thing, but
I mean, they were, but you were also like, oh, they're kids.
I thought they were so young they were just buddies, But
Well, they
apparently
kissed in the first season.
they did.
Yeah, they did.
Okay, but yeah, I mean, in this episode, it's obvious like he's just enamored with her.
Yes, yes.
And that's how the episode ends. So
It is
that's,
awesome cliffhanger ending. I
of
hate that
course.
Stranger Things does that because you can't. I mean, that's the
Why
sign of a
have a
good.
cliffhanger
Well,
when
because
it's
it
not?
forces you to keep watching. Like I'd like to watch one at a time or a couple at a time, but when it ends like that, like you can't stop.
Yeah, I mean, that was my argument, was why have a cliffhanger, because I'm watching them back to back to back. Isn't everybody watching them back to back to back? But
No,
apparently
because
not.
I shut that one off and didn't watch the next one until the next day.
But yeah, it's like 9 hours of TV, so it is tough to find a 9 hour block to watch the entire thing in one sitting.
Yeah, it took me a few days.
Yeah, I think it took me 3, but
I think it took me
most of
just
it
over
was
2.
on one day.
Yeah.
There's like 2 episodes here, the whole middle part, and then 2 episodes.
Well, that's too
Maybe
bad
that's
because
maybe that's why I
the
don't
one
like that
day
many.
the day you spent the most time watching it were the episodes you didn't like that much.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
That'll definitely be interesting to see what I think giving these more time, and it
more
might.
space to
Yeah.
process.
it might be a comment on binge watching as a whole. Like that might be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
I think real quick we should talk about the intro to the episode. We just have like we don't really know what the hell's going on here.
We?
We don't really know what the hell's going on, but we have some. It's like a chase, like some sort of getaway chase, and there's cops, and there's like a group of people in the van, and then there's a young woman of is she like Indian or something with a cool haircut, and she's got this.
But is it 80s?
Definitely not 80s. Definitely. You're the fashion expert.
The tip of the iceberg of the quibbles I have with this whole crew of people.
Yeah. So there's a minor spoiler. You will see them again. Obviously.
That'd be terrible if they put them in the first scene and you just never saw them again.
Well, although I mean, maybe there was something else, maybe it was pointing at something else, but
perhaps that would have been the better alternative.
Perhaps. She had a 008 on her arm, just like 11 has one of those. So we can, if you know season 1, if you know season 1, you can determine where she comes from, right?
Yes, and she clearly has some type of ability because she does something with her fist and
the tunnel collapses.
Somebody sees a tunnel collapse, but then you see that the tunnel didn't actually collapse. It was
and then they're all like, dude, what's wrong with you? Why did you?
Yeah. Wasn't his fault. But it's weird because our sister was watching Stranger Things season 1 for the first time while I was rewatching it. And as I rewatched it, I was like, she's called 11. So that implies that there's a 1 through 10. And I thought that there was such cool potential there. And I'll leave it at
that. Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to comment on their powers real quick. I always like when, superpower characters have some sort of limitation, like with 11 and obviously this girl too, like their nose bleeds when they use their power. So obviously they have limits of they're limited to their amount of energy or what they're capable of. Granted, I don't know what's going on physically with them where it's so intense, using their powers is so intense that their brain bleeds and then comes out their nose or something.
It's kind of like in Lost when Desmond and Faraday time jump, their brain just can't keep up, and so it starts to escape through their nose.
Yeah, exactly. I guess maybe that's part of my point is that the nosebleed has become a cliche for my powers are too much or it's too much. My nose bleeds. It doesn't.
At least in Lost, it legitimately did kill people and mess with their brains.
Yeah,
I think all 11 has to do is stop and recharge for a little bit, and she's fine.
Yeah, and then she can just go again. Yeah. But I think the idea is that it's a tool, a storytelling tool through the film medium to, just quickly tell us this is taking a toll on the person. I do like putting limitations on a character like that, but kind of cliche, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's becoming, but it's 11's thing. But we see a couple other characters not using it, but suffering from the brain nosebleed or whatever.
Well, 008 for sure in the intro, has that going on too.
Her nose is bleeding?
Yeah, that's.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
Yep, so she has that too. That's why it's like they have limitations on their powers, which is good because her power obviously is some sort of mind, because the tunnel appears to collapse, but.
To one guy.
But to one guy. So if she was able to do this all the time without any limitation, that would be bullshit. But of course, it has the same effect like 11 using her stuff, Can
I just say I don't like the X-Men-y, everybody has a different power.
Yeah.
That seems so. Every time I watch the X-Men, I'm like,
about two of them, right?
This person does this. It's like, why wouldn't they have overlapping things?
Wait, you don't like that in general?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because in the X-Men, there's like 57 more than that mutants,
But
and they
that's
all
like
have specifically different things that they do.
I don't know if I can agree with you because like basically you're naysaying everything about superheroes in general. Like that's all superheroes are based around like Marvel and DC. It's all based around like specific like focused abilities and how they kind of like interact with each other.
What I'm saying is it's purely a storytelling thing.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
It's not as realistic as something like that can be. It's not realistic.
Oh no, definitely not. Yeah, at the end of the day, you're right. It's like just a way to present conflicts and yeah, things interacting in certain ways. Like what's a good example? What's like two superheroes where one has one power and then his weakness is like another one, and you know like
I did
like the
a thing
most
on
basic would be like Iceman versus Pyro.
right.
Like, like Iceman's probably vulnerable to Pyro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be fair, a lot of superheroes do have overlapping abilities. Like there's a lot who can fly, a lot who can like move things with their brains. Perhaps it's just a symbol for everybody's unique in their own combination of skills, but like
Sure.
I don't know, I expected 8 to have similar powers as 11.
And yeah, I guess maybe she does, and
Maybe she does.
maybe we'll find out more about that later in the season, possibly.
Yes.
Okay.
Possibly.
Possibly.
Probably. There's no
All
way
right.
to avoid it.
Yeah, unfortunately. What? Anyways, let's see here. Yeah, I don't know. I think we covered it pretty good.
Yeah, I think we did a pretty good. It's a real good watch, even on the second watch, and it's got such good music and such good reintroduction of characters. It's a really solid opening episode. Very
For
good.
sure. Yeah, I really like this one. Uh, both episodes 1 and 2 are my favorite of the season, so it'll be fun to talk about episode
Mhm.
2
Mhm.
whenever we get to that. Maybe next week. I don't know. Whenever we have time, we'll find.
Yeah,
We'll find time.
we will make time.
One more line I wanted to mention from Dusty, or I guess it's not really from him, but like yeah, it's when the nerdy guy in the arcade's trying to get a date, and
Ugh.
he's like, "You'll spread your rash," and then like he's like, "Acne's not a rash, doesn't spread."
Yeah, that is the best part is the kids messing around. That's
Like that's it.
that's what they should stick to. And I guess that's all I should say.
Yeah, and at this, once again, I said this earlier, just like the sci-fi stuff in this show isn't my favorite part of the show. And if there's one critique I could give at this point, it's like if they can tighten up the sci-fi element, like really make that solid and make sense. I think
Make
the
it
show is amazing.
understandable. Like there's a fine line between mystery and like enigma and complete leaving everybody confused. Like you have to find somewhere that covers both.
Right. And maybe not
I
just
know it's
confused,
hard.
but like make it feel the sci-fi stuff has to feel like it has actual weight to it. And I can't spoil anything for the rest of the season, but I do think by the end of the season I felt that a little more.
Okay.
I felt that weight, and that's why it ends pretty good. But
I suspect you'll feel it even more upon a rewatch, but I'm just going by what I felt with season 1. Like I couldn't believe how much more sense it made when I watched it again. So
okay.
I'm hoping for a similar sensation for season 2.
Yeah, me too. I don't want to be a naysayer. It's just just how I feel at this point in time about the season.
There are things we can knock about it, but you can always go back to season 1 and this episode and be like, yeah, this show's awesome. When it's working, it really works.
Yeah, of course.
You could say a lot of people said a similar thing about It, the movie that, was very big a month or so ago.
Yeah.
And that some people were disappointed with the clown and the scary parts, but they said the kids were so good that it didn't even matter, that it maybe wasn't as scary as they wanted it to be, or didn't live up to what they were hoping to be scared of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely I could see a comparison there. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Anything else you want to add about the episode?
Nope. I think we've talked enough about it.
Yes, we have. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the podcast. Just want to say thank you so much for listening. You can follow us on Twitter at TVizaRealMom. Be sure to like, thumbs up, favorite, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.
Bye.